So we're going to start a new unit, and that new unit is going to be all about cells. And we're going to start with a little introduction about all the different types of cells and some basic information about them. So the importance of cells are that they are the basic unit of life. All living things are made of cells. They are either a single cell or they are made of multiple cells. And because we're studying living things, it's really important to understand the basic unit of life. And if you notice that on the screen, you will see two of the statements that I just shared with you, that's because they're part of the cell theory. The cell theory was developed in the middle of the 1800s. We were about 100 years into uncovering cells and kind of finding them as we developed microscopes. And we kind of came up with three basic principles about cells. All organisms are made of cells. Cells are the basic unit of life. And all existing cells are produced by other living cells. There's no spontaneous generation. Cells don't just pop into existence. They are extensions of previous cells. Now, we've had about 150 years of science, and microbiology has progressed in that time. So we've added some things to the cell theory. That includes that energy flow occurs within cells. That means that the cells inside of your body are producing energy. They are going through cellular respiration and they are producing energy. And that happens in all organisms. All organisms on the cellular level have to produce energy. There's hereditary information. There's genetic information in the form of DNA that is passed from cell to cell. And all cells have the same basic chemical composition. They're all made of the same stuff. Organic molecules make up cells. Now, we're going to be breaking down all the different types of cells and some characteristics of cells. And you're going to want this table in your notes. So I'm going to give you a break here to pause the video and copy down this chart into your notes. Okay, now that you've had a chance to copy down this table, let's talk about some characteristics of cells. There are some characteristics that all cells possess. They all have a cell membrane, which is the outer layer of the cell. Then there's a cytoplasm, which is the filling inside of a cell. They all contain DNA. They all have to have genetic material, and they all have ribosomes. And ribosomes are organelles that help build proteins. They're really important. And because all cells have the same basic chemical composition, they all have to have proteins. So they all need something to build proteins. There are some features that are unique to different types of cells. And we can kind of distinguish between the different types of cells based on those features. We have two different types of categories that cells fall into, two basic categories: prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Prokaryotes are generally small, relatively simple cells without membrane-bound organelles. They don't even have a nucleus. Their DNA is just hanging out in the middle of their cytoplasm. Examples of prokaryotes include bacteria and archaea. Eukaryotes are generally larger than prokaryotes and are considered more complex because of the presence of membrane-bound organelles within those cells, like a nucleus that contains their DNA. Organelles that all eukaryotes share are things like the Golgi apparatus and the rough and smooth endoplasmic reticulum, and these are responsible for building different types of molecules like proteins and things like lipids. Then we have things like vesicles that move things around through the cell. Then we have the cytoskeleton, which is some filaments that hold the cell's shape. We have things like peroxisomes that digest and kind of break down different molecules. And we have mitochondria that are responsible for making energy that the cell can use. We can further divide eukaryotes into different categories as well. The ones that we're going to focus on are plant and animal. There are also things like protists and fungi, but we're going to focus on plant and animal cells. And they each have distinguishing characteristics, specifically organelles that distinguish them. Plant cells have a cell wall. That's a stiff outer coating outside of the cell membrane that helps the cell hold its shape. They have chloroplasts that perform photosynthesis, and they have a large central vacuole. A little comment here, animal cells do have vacuoles, but they do not have a large central vacuole. That is unique to plants. Animal cells, on the other hand, have a centrosome, which is important when you are going through mitosis or cell division. And they also have lysosomes. Lysosomes help break down different molecules within the cell. And there is some discussion about whether plant cells have lysosomes as well, but we are still discussing that within the biological community. We haven't come to a consensus yet. So why do eukaryotes have organelles in the first place? Well, the answer is compartmentalization. They are more successful if they divide up the responsibilities into different organelles. So if we can divide up the things that the cell has to do, the cell is going to be more successful. This allows the cell to get more done. So that's why we have organelles to begin with. The next topic is, why aren't cells bigger? Why are cells little? And it has to do with the limit placed by the surface area to volume ratio. That ratio puts a limit on cell size. Volume increases at a faster rate than surface area does. And because of that, if the cell gets too large, there won't be enough surface area to absorb nutrients into the cell to sustain it. Because cells rely on their surface to get their nutrients and the things they need to survive. And if they get too big, they won't have enough nutrients coming in to stay alive. And that is going to be the end of this cell introduction. Like I said, a very quick intro into some basics about cells. We're going to be diving way deeper into cells in the next coming weeks and talking more about individual organelles and all the different cool, fascinating things that those organelles do.